Good evening. This is John Milburn. This is Laws 19038, Planning and Environment Law. It's week 4, and this week we're dealing with the subject, the nature of planning and environment law. The prescribed reading from Bates is chapters 4 and 6. Now, hopefully you've identified by now that what I have been doing is providing my summary, if you like, my take on what's important in each one of the chapters. I'll do that in a formal recorded session and upload that. The live Zoom sessions are perhaps intended to be more interactive and an opportunity to ask questions and discuss issues. So please feel free to join us each Wednesday at 7:45 p.m. The assignments that are due are not due for a while, but I'd like to talk about those tonight and provide some further background in terms of research. So I'm not going to cover the content of chapters 4 and 6. That's in the more formal recorded live sessions, although please feel free to ask any questions in relation to those things. I'm going to share my screen first up, and if you can bear with me while I do that. With any luck, you're now seeing my screen. And you'll see the first of the assignment pieces, which is due on the 7th of May 2015. This is in 2 parts. The first dealing with a case, and the second dealing with legislation and administrative procedures. In relation to the first part, the Predajon case from Cairns, you'll see the ASLI link. I trust that by now you've at least had a look at that case and gained some impression of that case. This is worth 15 marks, the maximum word count 2,000. You don't need to have specifically 500 words for each one of these questions. Provided the overall count is no more than 2,000, then I'm happy for you to distribute those words in whichever way you see fit. If you want, you can follow these headings of 1, 2, 3, 4 in identifying these issues in your own words, or if you like, you can meld them together. It's probably going to be easier if you use the headings that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And using your own words, there's no magic to that. It's really just identifying what you think is what is being said in the case. And of course, if you do quote from a case, or if you refer to the case in any specific detail, then you need to reference that. There's no magic in the referencing that I'm after. You can either use the formal Australian Guide to Legal Citations, which is the way lawyers reference, and that's what you'll see in the case law and also what you'll see in Bates. Essentially, you can describe it as using footnotes in simple terms. Or if you prefer, you can use Harvard. I don't mind. Either way is fine by me, provided that you don't plagiarise. So in the Predajon case, online, you'll see the discussion piece, which is recorded and it's uploaded between me and Rod Litzter QC. Rod was very kind to donate his time in discussing these matters with me and some other students, and he was the lead counsel for one of the litigants in the case. So that will provide you with some really good background material and a starting point in dealing with that case. The second part deals with the concept of ecological sustainability and IDAS and a few other things. And I'm just going to show you a few tips in relation to ways in which that might be usefully researched. I'll just briefly have a look at assessment number 2. Now, this one's due on the 4th of June 2015. I know that seems a long way off, but I would really be encouraging you to get in and at least have a look at this material so that you're not leaving it to the last minute. Let's try and develop some thoughts about the material and perhaps jot those down as you go. So parts A and B deal with the Ella Bay Resort project. And this is really your ability to understand the administrative and procedures and the executive function associated with the planning approval process for a resort. Part C deals with the concept of the precautionary principle. You'll recall that we talked about that last week in the context of international law, in that the precautionary principle is really something which is being developed by nations and it's gaining much more momentum. So you do need to know what the precautionary principle is all about in the context of environmental law, There's lots of material in Bates, or you can research more widely. Now, the last one for assignment number 2 deals with your ability to search through the civil trial facility e-courts a particular case and make some comments in relation to it. So tonight's exercise will be useful in providing you with a head start in relation to that and some other matters as well. So they're the 2 assessment pieces. Please do use UCrew. Again, I've made comment that I think it's too quiet. I think we need to be sharing much more information, and I'd encourage you to do that and use UCrew as the forum. So before asking me a question by email, ask yourself whether that might better be placed on UCrew so that any response can be considered by everyone. And indeed, you're not just relying on my response. You may be able to access some excellent response from other students who can proffer a valuable opinion. All right, so what are we doing tonight? As I said, I'm not going to go through chapters 4 and 6. That's for your own reading, and that's for the other recorded video or videos for this week. What I want to do tonight is describe it as Share Your Secrets Week. Now, by that I mean I don't want to know what you did on the weekend. What I want to know is how you go about undertaking legal research, particularly online, in a way that has been beneficial to you and may be beneficial to your fellow students. So please feel free to share that information tonight, or if you wish, share that information online through UCrew, and I'll give you some tips and ways to start. So firstly, let's have a look at what I've got in mind. I'll just share the notes. Hopefully at this stage you're seeing my Word document, what I want to talk about tonight. I want to do a refresher on ASLI. I expect that you're all very familiar with ASLI by now, but just show you a couple of things in relation to the Sustainable Planning Act, IDAS, and the Note-Up facility. I'd like to talk to you about the e-courts search facility, and in particular, the case which is referred to in the second assignment, Fraser Coast against Byrne Brothers, so I'll give you some tips on what to look for there. And finally, we'll look at the Queensland Government Department of State Development website and a couple of tips there. All right, well, let's start with ASLI. If you're not familiar with this site by now, I would encourage you to catch up and become familiar with it. It's pretty easy. Firstly, cases and legislation. Queensland, I'm interested in the Sustainable Planning Act. We have a look down here at legislation and we see the Queensland Consolidated Acts. There is also the regulations, the historical acts, the numbered acts, etc. But for the moment, I'm interested not in the regulations, but rather the acts. Let's have a look at those. A to Z, updated 25 March. S, Sustainable Planning Act, and we'll see it hiding down the bottom. Let's click on that, and you'll see you'll see the list of the sections. Now, one of the things I do like about ASLI is that you can choose a particular section and go straight to it, as opposed to the authorized version where it's essentially a continuous text and you don't have that ability to go straight to a section. So that's why I like going to ASLI. Now let's talk about IDAS, Integrated Development Assessment System, and we'll find that is from memory chapter 6 of the Act, and there it is. All right, so chapter 6 deals with IDAS, and there's some sections there that you might want to read that could be very useful reading as far as your assignment is concerned. Let's start with what is IDAS. So it's the system detailed in the chapter for integrating various forms of state and local government assessment and approval processes. So this is all about the way in which the assessment and approval process is integrated through state and local government regimes. All right, what you can do is go back to the Act and follow through. One thing I tend to do when I'm reading a chapter is start on one section and then use this button here, Next, to go to the next one. And you'll see here that in the context of IDAS, there are 5 categories of development under the Act. They are exempt development, self-assessable development, development requiring compliance assessment, assessable development, and prohibited development. And you'll see that all development is exempt unless it is one of these 4. All right, so that's interesting. Let's go to the next section, and you'll see here where regulations prescribe that various matters might be code or impact assessable for an assessable development. I know the terms seem very confusing, but it's just a matter of working your way through the terminology, and it all becomes reasonably familiar after a while. Now, I'm just going to stop on this section. I won't go any further into IDAS. I'll leave you to do that reading for yourself. But I'm going to show you this Note Up facility, which I think is really cool. Here we are, Note Up the top, and let's click on that. And we have now a list of cases which have been decided in various jurisdictions where this particular section, 232 of the Sustainable Planning Act, has been referred to or considered. I'm searching at the moment by relevance. That's the default. And what we have is a list of cases, not in chronological order. I could do that by going to date order, but rather by relevance. And you'll see that where it talks about relevance, there's a percentage prescribed. So Palthorpe's case is allocated as being 25% relevant to Section 232. It's all rather arbitrary, of course, but what that tells me is that Section 232 was not the main issue under consideration in the case of Palthorpe. Another thing that tells me it probably wasn't that relevant from a planning and environment perspective is that it was a Supreme Court case rather than a planning and environment court case, which is HIMEX. So arguably you'd think HIMEX might in fact be more relevant. But let's have a look at Palthorpe out of interest, and you'll see it was a Supreme Court case handed down on the 7th of November. The hearing was on the 25th of July. Justice Philippides of the Supreme Court dealt with that matter, and it was actually more a case about the Succession Act and a will. And you'll see that Rebecca Treston was the barrister. She's a QC now, dealing with the Succession Act. But if we look down, we'll find some green arrows at some stage or other, which will give us an idea of, or will show us where there's a reference to the section number that we're after. So in the catchwords, you'll see Planning and Environment or Sustainable Planning Act, Section 232 was referred to in this case, and you just look for those green arrows and click on that and we'll take you to the next hit. All right, so that's Note Up facility, which gives you an idea of cases that are relevant to that particular section. Just have a quick look at the HIMEX case, and you'll see that that's much more of a planning and environment type decision. Judge Rackerman dealt with that matter. It was delivered in June of 2014. Danny Gore was one of the barristers involved in that one, and you can see that it's a reference to the planning and environment regime, and you'll see the green arrows there give you the guide as to the fact that this is the paragraph where that particular section was considered. All right, well, if there are no questions, I'll move on. But before I leave this page, there is something else I want to show you, and it's this thing called LawSite. Now, this is really good because if we click on LawSite, it tells us the list of cases which came later where a reference was made to this decision of Palthorpe. So you can see that the South Australian Supreme Court, the Queensland Supreme Court, and the South Australian Supreme Court, or Court of Appeal, I guess, Supreme Court, made reference to this particular case of Palthorpe. And there are some cases and articles cited which are referred to here as well. Okay, so SiteUp is a law site is a really good way of finding out what cases came after the particular case where there was a reference made to it. All right, let's move on to the second issue that I want to talk about tonight, which is this very relevant and important e-courts search facility. So you'll need this for your exam, or your assessment rather. So let's see if I can find the internet again, sorry. Go back to ASLI, and now let's go to this website. All right, so here we have Queensland Courts homepage. Some really good, interesting things here. You see latest news, and if we pan down, you'll see there's a Planning and Environment Court Practice Direction, number 9 of 2014. Here we have the lists of matters that are on during the day. Here we have the court calendar schedule of what matters are coming up. Judgments, these, that's so, for example, the Predijon case could be found in there. But this is the one I want to show you, Search Civil File Facilities. Let's click on that. And in particular, let's think about the case of Fraser Coast Regional Council against Byrne Brothers Pty Ltd. How are we going to find that? Well, we go to this party search facility here. Click on that, and you'll see that you can search via the type of proceedings, the location of the proceedings, there's a drop down, the court, where it was listed, and various parties. So what we want here is the Fraser Coast Regional Council, and there it is. Now you might note that I did that by voice recognition, which prompts me to remind myself to say to you that each term I challenge whoever thinks they're the best typist in the class to a typing race. The only difference is that I get to say what I want to say versus the person who's typing. So if you're up to the challenge, please let me know, and we'll see if we can get some interest on that on UCrew. I did upload a video in relation to voice recognition. You might be interested in that. All right, so let's coming back to what we're after. We want to find the case of Fraser Coast Regional Council against Byrne Brothers. Now, you won't find it in judgments, and the reason is that it's not a case which is finished yet. So what we're really showing you here is part of the lead up to what will potentially become a reported decision. It may not do, it may not ever go to trial, but it does show you some really interesting things, and purposes of exercise is to show you how to access this lead-up information. All right, so let's click on this and we'll find out about the Fraser Coast Regional Council. You'll see here that there are a number of results that come up. There's this case here, number 9 of 15. That's not a reported decision yet, that's just the case number. And this is the interim material. So that particular case is in Maryborough. This one's in Brisbane. You'll see they're all district. What we really mean by district is Planning and Environment Court, because as you'll recall from previous discussions, the P&E Court is part of the district court regime. All right, so what we're looking for is this case number 4926 of 2013. Let's see if we can find it, and there it is. Fraser Coast Regional Council against Byrne Brothers. It's in the district court, currently in Brisbane, and if we click on this link, view the file details, we'll come up with some interesting things. And you'll see where the proceedings started, how they started by way of application, the names of the parties and who they're represented by. And then you'll see a list of events. These are things that have happened. It's both historical and prospective. You'll see that Judge Rackerman, Judge Jones, Judge Horniman-Wren, Judge Everson have all had some part to play in various orders that have been made, and the Registrar of the P&E Court has also been involved in substantive matters. Now, the matter started with an application. It then came on for a series of reviews before there was a directions application, and there's more reviews. And you'll see that the most recent review was dealt with by Judge Jones in February 2015, and there's another review scheduled for September of 2015. So that's, if you like, a chronology of what's happened. Now, here's the interesting part, documents. What we want to see is how this thing started. So let's have a look at the originating application. I can click on that. It will now come up and it will show me the actual document that was physically filed on the 20th of December 2013 by the solicitors for Fraser Coast Regional Council, and it outlines in this application what it is that the applicant wants the court to order. And you'll see there that the applicants are seeking an enforcement order under the Sustainable Planning Act. Thereafter, an enforcement order requiring certain things be done. And it then goes on to say, and the basis upon which we argue that this should be made are as follows. So the grounds relied upon are these. And there's reference there to essentially, in summary, the case as put in that form of application by the applicants. If we go back, you'll see that the respondent has filed a notice of appearance or entry of appearance, and that's just simply saying, yes, we enter an appearance and here are the lawyers that are acting now for the respondents. You'll see various orders that are made progressively. So Judge Rackerman made an order, which is really a directions order, saying, all right, I'm now satisfied that there has been compliance with the Sustainable Planning Act with respect to serving the original application. So I'm essentially, Judge Rackerman is saying the matter is now live before this court, and here's what I expect will happen. And you'll see the first thing is a without prejudice conference to be convened by the Registrar of the P&E Court, which is the standard thing that we'd expect to see happen. All right, so the orders are made and materials are filed. You'll see, for example, here, that there was an amendment to the originating application that was done per order of Judge Horniman-Wren, and you'll see that the original application was in fact amended by order of the court, granting approval to allow this to occur. And you'll see here that when we amend something, it's in red and it's underlined. And anything that's taken out is ruled through, and what's added in is underlined. So the application is slightly changed to reflect those different circumstances. Now, in addition to the application and the orders that are made by the court, you'll see the actual evidence, and the evidence is the affidavit evidence, and there's a number of people that have filed affidavits there. I'm just going to select one. It's a bit lengthy, so it might take a little time to load. It's an affidavit of the lawyer who was representing one of the parties. It's actually what we call a hearsay affidavit. So just going back to basics, an affidavit is actually evidence. It is sworn evidence. It has the same effect as if someone was in the witness box and gave evidence on oath. In other words, if the information contained in the affidavit is, for example, a lie, and I'm not suggesting any of this is, but if it was a lie, then that person would be subject to the rules of perjury. Now, I mentioned that this particular affidavit is a hearsay affidavit, and I'll explain that shortly. So it's an affidavit of Stuart McNaughton. He is a partner at McCullough Robertson, one of the firms dealing with the matter, and he's the one who primarily has carriage of the matter on behalf of the respondent. In that affidavit, Mr. McNaughton outlines the timeline. He then talks about some of the documents and correspondence. He then talks about what's outstanding and what's new. Now, where I say it's a hearsay affidavit is this. It says, I am informed by Mr. Phil Walmsley, etc., etc. What that means is that Mr. McNaughton is passing on information to him, passing on information which was told to him. And generally speaking, that's called hearsay, and it's not admissible unless it's in relation to a procedural type affidavit like this. So if it was something really substantial to the case, then the person who actually made the statement would have to swear the affidavit or give that evidence on oath. Otherwise, it would be dismissed as being hearsay. All right. So hopefully that will give you some idea of how to start this assignment that you need to work on, where to find the material, and what might be interesting to read. So bear in mind, this is still a live case. You won't find the judgment anywhere. The purpose of this exercise is to give you an idea as to what is actually filed progressively in litigation and give you some precedents that might be useful for future reference, and give you an idea of what the lawyers in this case thought was important and worthy of putting into to the material. So it's really the background to what might ultimately lead to a reported decision. So remember last week we talked about Hansard as giving some background to what ultimately led to legislation. The primary speech, the document explanatory note, etc. That's all the background material that better puts the legislation in context. This material that I'm talking about tonight is the background material, the source material that gives better context to what might ultimately be the final decision of a court. Okay, now the final area that I want to talk about tonight is the Queensland Government Department of State Development website. And let's see if we can call that up on the screen now. So it's a very good website. It's quite interactive, definitely worth a look in the context of planning and environment law. So there's some information about economic development. There's some material about Coordinator General's projects. But what I really want to show you is this part here, which deals with resources. Now, if you're looking for some quick information that's up to date, why not have a look at these fact sheets and guidelines? So if, for example, you want to know some information in relation to the State Assessment and Referral Agency, you'll find that in these up-to-date fact sheets. And some of these fact sheets are relevant to particular regional offices like Wide Bay Burnett, and you'll see how the Assessment and Referral Agency is relevant in the Wide Bay Burnett area. Okay, sorry, I've lost my link. Just regain that. Resources. The other thing I want to show you, and there's not much more for tonight, but I'll just show you this. And it's a little similar to what we showed you before in terms of the search facilities, but it's the Planning and Environment Court Appeals database. So it's only the P&E appeals, and you can see here that you can search by way of relevant councils, so CANS. Let's download that, and you'll see a list of all the appeals which have been reported. These are case documents in relation to various applications. So here, for example, is one of them. And again, it shows you a really good precedent. If, as a lawyer, wanting to know how to prepare a notice of appeal and what might be in an appeal, so it gives you a really good guideline there as to what was included in that particular case. All right, so that's really all I want to talk about tonight in terms of legal research. So I called it Share Your Secrets. Now, they're just a few things that I find useful, interesting, provide some background, provide some context, but you may have found some really good places to find up-to-date material that you'd like to share with everyone else. So please do that through UCrew. Now, before I sign off, are there any questions live? I see there's nothing on the chat facility. All right. Well, thank you very much for your attendance tonight, for viewing this recording. Make sure you keep up with your reading. Make sure you keep up with watching the recorded videos. And please, interact on UCrew. It's a little quiet for my liking, so I think we can share a lot more information. And if you come across interesting material or you have questions to ask, please share it on UCrew. If you have a question that you want to ask me, why not ask on UCrew, and that way I can provide my answer for the benefit of everyone. And who knows, maybe your fellow students will have some answers that will be really valuable, and I'm sure they will. So anyway, all the best, and we'll see you next week.